Hello, and welcome to the Megan Taylor Creator Podcast, a show for entrepreneurs looking to grow their business with digital marketing. In this episode, I'll be sharing with you how I plan my content strategy campaigns for each quarter. Let's get started. In this episode of the Megan Taylor Creator Podcast, I wanted to take a step back from talking about bigger picture marketing topics and take a deeper look at content strategy, more specifically how I approach planning campaigns for the quarter. I did a podcast episode similar to this quite a while back, I think, but I think it's good to kind of refresh my take on this topic every so often because I think that obviously my approach changes and new marketing trends come about, and also just I learn things from previous campaigns. So I think it's important to update you with how I plan campaigns for each quarter. And I also wanted to go in a bit more depth and talk about why I plan campaigns for each quarter as well, because I think that everyone kind of has their own way of planning content. Some people plan for the year and kind of take that as the document that they follow for all of their marketing campaigns, whilst other people might plan on a monthly basis. And obviously, it does kind of depend on each business, especially if it's a seasonal business where you go through like ebb and flows of seasonality, where for a couple of months at a time, you might be like really busy and then there's going to be a lull. And you know that just because obviously with a seasonal business, there's not necessarily as much demand for your business offering year round. But that said, you still want to stay on top of marketing so that when high season does come around, you can obviously market yourself and build up a sense of demand and interested customers so that you can build up to a really good season. That's how this episode is going to go. As always, this is going to be quite a long episode as well. And yeah, it's just going to be really chill. It's going to be less broken down into tips and more just me talking through my process. So let's just get straight into it. The first thing that I wanted to touch on when it comes to planning quarterly campaigns is why I like to plan quarterly campaigns. And the main reason for this is because I find that 3 months is enough time to really make progress and be able to significantly track how far you've come. Obviously, a lot can happen in 3 months, and obviously, a lot can happen in a month too. But generally speaking, I feel like 3 months is a better period of time for truly understanding how effective your content marketing has been. And also, I find that monthly campaigns, although they're sometimes necessary, they're just not necessarily as effective for really helping you achieve your goals. I find that they're better for things like brand awareness campaigns. And obviously, if you have like flash sales, for example, if you're a B2C business, then you're going to want to plan more of a monthly, timely campaign. But generally speaking, I find that 3 months allows you to be super laser focused whilst also giving yourself enough time to actually see any progress. And obviously, with quarterly campaigns, because obviously you are planning for 3 months at a time, it also does give you a lot of room to focus on multiple goals if you would like. And you can obviously plan multiple campaigns for 3 months, but I personally find that planning 4 campaigns each year is a really good way, at least, to get into the groove of marketing, especially if you're a small business owner who hasn't really had any experience planning and executing any campaigns, because marketing and consistently creating content to help aid your campaigns can be a very overwhelming process. So being able to kind of know that you have just 4 campaigns that you need to focus on, that you can get right, it's a really good approach for beginners. And speaking of getting things right, the problem with planning yearly campaigns is that if you plan an entire campaign for the year, which I don't think that many businesses do nowadays, but I know that a lot of the bigger corporations do that for the sake of saving time or just so that they can show their stakeholders where they're at. But even after reviewing some campaigns and strategies from bigger corporations, they typically will plan a year in advance, but split it up into 4 quarters anyway. So planning yearly campaigns is rarely what's going on for a business nowadays. It's just too overwhelming, and it's not effective. It's because it allows a lot of room for failure, and you can't track your progress over time in the same way that you can for a quarterly campaign. I mean, obviously you can track your progress, but at the end of the day, if you were to plan a yearly strategy, then you would set much bigger goals. And with quarterly campaigns, you can split those goals up and get a better understanding of how you're progressing throughout the year. Whereas over time, if you're monitoring the success of a yearly campaign, then you will mainly be seeing smaller progress. And that's obviously actually going to make you feel like you are setting yourself up for failure and that you may have failed because you're not anywhere near to achieving a big lofty goal that you set for yourself at the beginning of the year. So that's why I think it's important to plan quarterly campaigns. Now let's talk about how I go about this and any tips and tricks that I picked up to help you plan your campaign for the second quarter of 2023. Obviously, when I was talking about the reason why quarterly campaigns are so effective, my main reasoning behind why I take this approach with my content strategies is typically to do with goals and being able to make good progress over a 3-month period. So that would be my first tip for actually planning your quarterly campaigns, is to really think about what you actually want to achieve for each quarter. It's going to look very different for every business, but you want to consider, what does your year look like as a business? Do you have any upcoming product launches, or are you releasing any new services, or do you have any events coming up that you know you're going to want to plan? Take a look at your calendar and kind of pinpoint the main milestones in each month, and then group each milestone every month into 3 months. And those are the things that you're going to want to be focusing on. Again, obviously, if you've got multiple things going on, you will probably likely want to plan more than one campaign, because just one campaign isn't always going to be enough, especially if you're a much bigger business with multiple different offerings and areas that don't necessarily go together. Sometimes it's better to have separate campaigns, but generally speaking, just having a good idea and knowing what it is that you really want to achieve and market within the quarter is going to help you at least structure your campaigns and get ideas around maybe the sort of content that you should really be making based on your goals. So obviously, for example, if you're promoting an event, but the event's not until halfway through the year, you may want to spend the first 3 months of the year actually promoting the event itself and raising brand awareness and getting people to subscribe to your email list so that you can promote more about the event to them. Whereas the next quarter, when it's getting closer to the event, you'll probably want to focus more on actually driving ticket sales, or if it's a free event, registrations, so that you can actually get enough people to attend to make the event viable. So that's what I mean by understanding what's going on throughout the year for your business specifically is the best way to think about campaigns, and then write down your goals. But there's also going to be marketing goals that you might want to set. Personally, I don't think that there's that much merit with vanity metrics and things like that, but I do actually like to generally set vanity metrics, say for example my clients, because I find that it's a very easily digestible number, and once you've hit it, you've hit it. So I do think there is also strength in numbers as well when it comes to things like social media and how many people you have on your mailing list. I do think it is a good way to keep track of just how many people are actually actively engaging with your content across your distribution channels. But I do also think as well that you need to go a little bit deeper in terms of metrics and choose the metrics that are most relevant to what you're trying to achieve in that quarter. So again, if you're trying to drive ticket sales to an event, you're probably likely going to want to focus more on conversions and traffic and clicks and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas if it's brand awareness, it's probably going to be more looking at reach on social media and how many likes and shares and things like that you get, or if you get any replies from your subscribers on your mailing list. A lot of the time that just shows that people are engaging with your content and responding to it. Now that you have an idea of what it is that you want to achieve, it's time to take a look at the more practical side of planning a campaign. And for me, the practical side covers multiple areas of content strategy. And the first is frequency, the second is distribution, and the third is the actual content itself. So frequency, when I say that, I mean how often do you want to publish? And obviously this will depend largely on your distribution channel. So say for example, if you're focusing largely on social media marketing and one of your main channels is TikTok, that you are going to need to plan a lot of content for multiple times a day. 5 to 7 days a week is normally the best way to approach TikTok. If you're just starting out, you may just want to post one time a day, twice a day to ensure that at least you're getting on the platform and you're getting your content out there. But if you really want to succeed, a platform like TikTok really does require fresh content a lot. And it's the same with, say, for example, Pinterest. Obviously, you need to think about frequency in a cross-channel marketing sense. So that's why it's so important to identify your distribution channels too, because if you don't have an idea of where you'll be posting content, it's very difficult to start coming up with a content calendar that you can maintain as a business and that's going to give you success as well. So those two factors are really important. And then obviously I mentioned that you need to plan the content itself. And this is actually one of the last steps that I would take in coming up with a quarterly content strategy. I would look at what it is you're trying to achieve with your goals. And then now that you understand that, you can come up with themes, and these themes should still fit within content pillars, or they can act as content pillars. Like an overall theme can be the content pillar that you'll be focusing on. But generally speaking, I like to put themes for my campaigns because I think it's very easy for your target audience to digest what it is you're trying to communicate if you have one theme. And it also helps you plan out your creative as well. So if one of your distribution channels is PPC, so paid advertising, then depending on your approach, you're going to need to come up with some graphics and things like that, or some videos, and you're going to want to ensure that it has the same theme as other content across your distribution channel, because contrary to popular belief, whilst your audience may favour one particular channel, it does not mean that they're not using other channels. So you need to be cognizant of that, and you need to remember that whatever content you put out there, it all kind of needs to work together, which is why I think planning a campaign through the lens of a cross-channel marketing campaign is so effective, because it allows you to really focus on that and focus on delivering a great all-round experience. And obviously a good way to do that is know what content you're going to create that's fresh, and then knowing what content you're going to repurpose into smaller bits of content. So I like to do this because it's how I've always planned campaigns. I call it the top-down approach, and that's essentially planning your campaigns around one or more pieces of long-form content, and then the long-form content you can distribute on your main distribution channels, and then you can slowly repurpose those large pieces of content to fit different distribution channels. And this way you know that you're going to be producing quality content because you spent the time to create something that's really long form and packed with value, but you don't have to waste as much time creating fresh content and trying to keep up with multiple distribution channels. So when it comes to actually planning out your campaign and documenting the process, I think that it's really effective to have a centralized content marketing workflow. So for example, I really like to use Notion because I can create multiple different pages, but I can organize those pages really nicely so that I can access them quickly and effectively in a way that works for me and how my brain works when I'm trying to complete tasks. And obviously, as you'll be likely posting across multiple channels, you want to design a document or use a piece of software where you can track a content calendar that's essentially a cross-channel content calendar. And you'll want to make sure that you've got enough content ideas to actually fuel your cross-channel marketing campaigns for the 3 quarters. And I find as well that actually planning your content calendar not only around the different distribution channels but your different campaigns as well makes it really, really effective to be able to see exactly what piece of content is meant for what. You can also go one step further too and bring in customer avatars and say this piece of content is meant for this campaign, it's meant for this distribution channel, it will be new or repurposed, and it's meant for this customer avatar. So you can obviously get really deep into customer segmentation and things like that, and that way you're going to make sure that you essentially have your marketing planned for the entire 3 months, and then you can start batch creating content. You've got it all centralized in one place and you've visualized it in a way that makes sense to you. I also think it's really good to obviously have a publication date but have a progress section as well, so progress column if you're planning it on your content calendar on a campaign. So this is like where you would put whether a piece of content has been started, whether it's in the draft phase, whether it's in the editing phase, wise, and then whether it's published. And then if SEO is a really big thing for you as well, and if your website is a big channel, then it should be, you can also put keywords and things like that. And I know this doesn't sound simple, but if you really work on the design and really make the design functional, then it can be really simple. Obviously, you can use things like color coding to distinguish channels and other important pieces of information so that you can differentiate a little bit easier what bit of content is meant for what. Then this is going to be really effective for you. I actually do have a content calendar that I've created to kind of show you more of what I mean and more of how I actually do plan every quarter. And it's a Notion content calendar template, and it's a really effective, simple piece of software that you can use where you can really track the progress of your campaigns moving forward. And yeah, I think as well within that content calendar, it's also good to have a brainstorming section. So like an idea bank, which I do have in my content calendar. And this way you can come up with ideas and already understand which ideas you think will be better for which campaigns and which customer avatar you're trying to appeal to the most. You can also do things like identify evergreen topics that you should cover, because that way you'll know what content is more of a priority. I think most campaigns, in my opinion, are typically driven by, I would say, maybe 60 to 70% of evergreen content, and then the rest is trending and industry news and things like that. So you can kind of make sure that your business is staying up to date and relevant, but you're still covering the foundational topics. And in my personal opinion, when you're looking at what your themes are for the year and what your campaigns will be centered around, and just generally the long form pieces of content that you will be producing, they should 9 times out of 10 be evergreen pieces of content. That way you can reuse them throughout the year, and they can be like ongoing campaigns that are kind of running automatically and in the background, so that you can just focus on creating different campaigns whilst also still marketing something that's important to you and your business. So yeah, that was it. That's everything I have for this episode. It was a very kind of rambly episode, but I really enjoyed it. I like to take a step back every so often and record podcast episodes where I am actually thinking off the top of my head. I think is a really good way for me to get used to being able to kind of communicate my thoughts clearly using this medium. Like I mentioned several times throughout this episode, I do have a content calendar that you can use to help you plan your quarterly campaigns moving forward. As always, if you liked this episode, please like the video on YouTube and subscribe to our channel so that you can be made aware of any new podcast episodes that come out. And as always, I will speak to you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.